Good morning, welcome back to the channel. It's a nice and sunny but fairly windy morning, and we're going to be working on the Vauxhall Corsa this time, so let's go and take a look. Let's go in and take a look. So this is the Vauxhall Corsa 2010-2011, so it's the Corsa D revision, and we're looking at the front driver side top mount because that's the one that I think is clunking away. So first of all we'll get the wheel off, but also just to show you, that's where you get access to the top mount itself. So the best way of doing it is actually to take the wiper tray off this piece here. So we need to pop the wipers off, then we can get the tray off and we can get under there so we can get it undone, because it's a bit of a tricky access point, that one. So I think we might get the wiper tray off whilst it's still on the ground, because that's the easy bit, and we'll go from there. Let's get the wipers off. 13mm. Just crack them loose. Prise them off the splines. Now sometimes they come off easier than others. Unfortunately I don't have a puller tool, so I'm going to go and get a pair of pliers and just try to gently prise them off. This is the only way that I've found to do it without puller tools. You just have to be careful not to damage the top thread on it, but you can see it's starting to go. I should really just buy a puller tool, because it would make things like this much easier. There's one. Again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen this off before I actually jack the car up. So I'm going to get a ring spanner onto that, and then get one of the square drives on the top of there to hold it, and then hopefully we'll just crack that loose. Right, here we go. So we've got an 18 ring on the bottom, and I think this is a 9 socket on here. So what we can now try and do is we can try and crack it loose, and it looks like it might be quite difficult. Just trying to work it either way to start with. Oh, we've got some movement. Which is good. Starting to go. I think we'll get some penetrating oil on here because the threads look quite bad, but at least it's starting to move. Now I'm happy that's loose. Let's go down, remove the wheel, and we can start down there. Remember safety when you're working on the car when it's jacked up. So I've got the car jack in place. I've also got an axle stand under one of the main bolts that hold the wishbone in, so it's a nice solid jacking point and a nice solid point, and I've got them both holding the car, so that's nice and safe. So we can now take the wheel off. Now we're in here, so what we're going to need to do is we're going to take off the main strut. So we need to undo these two here at the knuckle, take the ABS line off, the brake pipe off, and that, oh, and also the anti-roll bar link, and that should allow us to move this back and then undo it from the top. So I think we'll take the anti-roll bar off on this joint rather than the bottom one, and then we'll get these two freed up and then we can get moving. Let's give you a bit of an update because I've continued on, so you can see the nuts are off the bottom here. I've got the anti-roll bar joint disconnected. By the way, somebody in the past has commented and complained that I talk about tools and what I use too often. I'm going to do it again because, to be honest, I think that's one of the biggest things that changes how you do work on cars. And getting an impact wrench like this, it's just a cheap one, doesn't have an awful lot of power behind it as well, this one. If I have a look, this one only does 400 nanometers of torque. So even something like this makes all the difference getting these bolts off. So it's taken very little time actually for me to get to this state. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo the top mount because we're now all loose at the bottom. You can see because the bolts don't have all the tension on, we can undo the top, take these out, and then we can take things out. So let's move back to the top and undo the top mount. Almost undone. This is quite difficult using the spanner set. I'll show you. So you put the 18 ring on the bottom there. If you've got a ratchet ring spanner, it would work great for this job. That on there, and then what I've got is I've got a small, what's this, 9mm that sits and holds the top whilst I put force on my ring spanner, but it's difficult. It's at this point I want to remind you of a couple of top tips because I forgot to do these and it made my job an awful lot harder. So first thing, whilst we're undoing the top mount, take these bolts out so that this piece here, so the main suspension strut, is a bit loose, because if we're trying to undo it from the top, we're actually working against the force of the bottom. So it's kind of compressing slightly and it's putting a lot of weight on the nut at the top. So that'll ease that off. Second of all, strap up the hub just so that when you release this, it doesn't come out and potentially pull the drive shaft out, just to make sure that that doesn't all come apart on you. So a couple of top tips that I'd forgotten to do and I've caught up and done them now, so just as well. So I'm going to continue, take the top mounting bolt out. And yet again, I thought I'd show all the problems that I've had. So I'm still struggling to take the top nut off because now I've got nothing to grab that top little spindle left with my sockets, so that's a real problem. Now, like before I said to undo the bolts at the bottom, actually I've done the opposite. I've put a bolt back in now, and I've also used a small bottle jack to lift the suspension up, compressing the spring slightly, and you may now see there's a slight gap appeared underneath. Underneath there is another nut, another 18. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get another 18 spanner. Let's just get you in on the action there. So I'm going to get an 18 spanner in underneath like this to get hold of that nut under there. There we go. And that should now allow me, yeah, that's what I wanted. You see, so now I can hold that one steady and hopefully, oh, there's a lot of force on that still, but hopefully I can then undo this last piece and then we're there. So there's a little tip for you. As you start to get further up, if you compress the suspension, get underneath with an 18. It's much better than holding onto that that little top rod there. So get an 18 socket on here. I've got something with a bit of extra leverage, and just off camera it suddenly released, and you see it's gone nice and loose now. So I think it's finally cracked free. Yep, it has. That took a lot of work. Now you can see the top rubber retainer, and you can see the socket that I've kept a hold of. So I think that's the reassembly technique, to do that as much as possible with the suspension lifted up. and that'll make things a bit easier. So now we should be able to go at the bottom here and drop the suspension out. Let's bring you down here. Now I'll need to release the bottle jack. Remember, I've got that to hold on to my mob assembly and everything. Now I need to get this bolt back out, which, watching out for the brake line there, hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. Yeah. And obviously this is now holding the weight, so if I just wrestle it a little bit. Shock absorbers aren't heavy, they're just awkward particularly. There we go. And keeping a hold of the shock absorber, make sure our brake lines are free. And of course it's now in the way of the ties that I've put in place, which is excellent. It's never quite as straightforward, is it? There we go. And out it comes. So let's go take a look. Here we go. Here's the removed shock absorber. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get that on the spring compressor, take the spring off, and that lets us take the top mount off and replace it. So this is the spring compressor that I've got. Better than just the wind-on ones. This is hydraulic, so it's a bit safer. You can see quite big cups to hold the springs in place. So I'm going to get it prepared up and show you that. I've got it all set up with the spring compressor here. So the idea is I've got the spring fully sat in the two cups, which is good. You change the cup sizes on this spring compressor depending on the size of the spring. So this one's fitting in quite nicely. I'm going to pump the foot pedal, compress the spring, which will take the tension off the top mount here, and then we can undo the top mount safely. Bring that out, and we'll see how we get on. So let's give this a go. There you go. So we've compressed the spring in the cups, so they're holding it nice and solid. You can see now we've got plenty of play, so what we can do is undo the nut at the top, take the top mount off and replace it. We'll do that whilst it's all sat on the spring compressor.
It doesn't take much to be a hero. It only takes that small, enlightening heart you want to share. much to be a hero. It only takes that small light in your heart you want to share.
So you're probably not been able to hear me for the last few bits because I think the microphone hasn't been turned on properly, so that's a bit of a shame. So I've positioned it all up, as you'll have seen. Got the top nut in place, ready to start fastening in, so hopefully it'll fasten in a little bit easier than it came out. And actually, to give you an idea, you might just be able to see, as I'm tightening this up, the centre on this isn't spinning anymore. So I think we had a couple of problems going on that wasn't helping us out. So that's going on much better now. Now as it gets to the pinch point, I'm going to need to use the socket on the top, but otherwise, that's gone on much easier. It's quite a windy day here. I live in the northeast of England, in Hartlepool, and the weather can be quite vicious. It's obviously getting to winter now, so the weather's getting colder, not as pleasant to be outside doing car work, unfortunately.
Well, unfortunately, because of the microphone failing, so you can see I've put the strut back into place, done the top mount up, and just put the wiper tray back in and get the wipers in, and that pretty much covers everything that you need to do the top mount replacement on the Vauxhall Corsa D. So hope you've enjoyed this video, and please do pop a like down below and a subscribe, and we've got some more videos coming up very soon indeed, so I'll see you next time.